Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to be very honest with you today. The halving's in 14 days, and I see a lot of misinformation about the halving, and I want to clear it up. I cleared it up in yesterday's video. I'm going to clear it up again today. I'm going to tie it into some unique information about my Bitcoin macro predictions. But before I do any of this stuff, we need to look at the BingX and BitGet exchanges, my favorite exchanges for this YouTube channel. BingX being a global non-KYC exchange, BitGet being global KYC minus the USA. Take your pick, sign up. Both are very low in trading fees, and you can get even lower trading fees with my referral links down below, which give you a 15% trading fee discount. Also, security-wise, they've never been hacked before. They've got a clean track record, so check them out with my referral links down below. Let's get into it. 14 days into a halving, that is just 2 weeks away, meaning on the 20th of April, we will see, right, the 4th ever Bitcoin halving. Now, what is the halving? It's when the mining rewards half on Bitcoin. What has it led to historically? It's led to macro bull markets. We look at the monthly chart on Bitcoin, for example. We can see very clearly each of these yellow lines represents a halving, and we can see very clearly that after the halving, the angle of trajectory that Bitcoin has to the upside rapidly increases, right? We have a very low angle of trajectory here in 2012. The halving occurs, it increases massively. Very low angle of trajectory here, increases massively. Same thing here. And we can expect the exact same thing, except this time in this cycle, we've actually seen Bitcoin move a little bit faster than expected, perhaps due to the fact that everyone now knows the halving is such a bullish indicator on a macro scale for Bitcoin, and hence they've bought in anticipation for the halving rather than waiting for it to happen. That could be a factor, but ultimately we'll never know the reason why we've moved up so high. It could be ETFs, could be anything really. There's no real objective reason for it. It's just happened, right? So we have seen some deviations in this cycle in the sense that we've moved upwards higher than expected, earlier than expected, but the fundamental characteristics of Bitcoin still remain. The halving is still a macro bullish event. All of the historical data points to that being the case. All of the historical data points to the halving leading to a macro bull market in which we see a traditional money cycle flow. It's very important to note, guys, we have not seen a traditional money cycle flow on cryptocurrency yet, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that we have not seen a traditional flowing of capital in crypto markets. We haven't seen the capital, let me delete all these lines so you can see it, go from Bitcoin, right, down into Ethereum, down into altcoins, and then back into fiat, and then back around into Bitcoin. We haven't seen Bitcoin dominance start to drop. Bitcoin dominance is still pretty much in the sky in relation to where it was in 2022 in the bottom. We haven't seen an altcoin season begin yet at all. There's been no altcoin season. And so the crypto money cycle flow, which happens in every single bull market, has not occurred. What does this mean? It means that the bull market, for all intents and purposes, has barely even started properly from a measurement of how money flows in cryptocurrency. Now, obviously, the Bitcoin price is in a bull market. Bitcoin price is doing very, very well. But the actual money cycle flow, which is a much more nuanced way to look at bull markets, hasn't actually occurred. We are still in step one. We're still in the Bitcoin phase of this cycle. From there, people need to get bored of Bitcoin returns, and they need to start getting greedy. And then they'll go into Ethereum, and then Ethereum will take off, and that will lead the market for a while. And then obviously we'll see a full-blown altcoin season. And from there will be nowhere else for the money to go, and it will go into fiat. We are in step one right now. We're still in the Bitcoin phase, right? And where are we historically when we see the halving? Well, anytime we ever see the halving, we're always in the Bitcoin phase because the halving is the start. So although Bitcoin has moved upwards a lot higher than expected, a lot earlier than expected, we're still in the same kind of phase of the cycle. We're still in the Bitcoin phase of the cycle, and historically we've only ever been in the Bitcoin phase of the cycle at the halving. So this halving is still relevant, and it's in 14 days now. And so what we've looked at so far is that the halving generally leads to a macro bull market, and we're in the same phase of the cycle that we're generally in around this period of time. Even though we've moved upwards higher than expected, faster than expected, we're still in the same phase, so it is comparable. And obviously it's the historical data is the only thing we have, so we have to look at the historical data. But I want to be very, very clear about the halving. Although it's a very good macro indicator, and although it's something that's still relevant to this cycle, which is what I've proved so far, those two things. One, it's a very good macro indicator. Two, it's very relevant to this cycle. The third thing I want to prove is this. The halving, okay, in contrast to popular belief, I assume, is not a short-term bullish event. In fact, it's a non-event. If we look at, for example, the prior halvings, we look at 2020. The halving occurred in mid-May 2020, and we saw literally nothing happen to the Bitcoin price until July, late July, going into August. for months on end after the halving, the Bitcoin price did not move, right? So the halving had zero short-term effect on Bitcoin whatsoever. We go back to the price cycle. The halving actually had a negative effect on Bitcoin in 2016. Not only did we go sideways for like a month, but then we went downwards like 30% before going upwards from there. And then if we go back to 2012, we can see very clearly that basically the same story, right? We didn't go downwards, but we basically went sideways. There was no significant increase in Bitcoin price. We went sideways for like a month or 2 months, and then we entered the full-blown bull market. So what have we proven so far? Number one, we've proven the halving is a very important macro indicator that leads to a macro bull market. Number two, that is relevant to this cycle, even though we have seen some deviations. And number three, the halving is not necessarily a short-term bullish or bearish event for that matter. It's more of a non-event, or at least it hasn't really got any predictive capability. So we can't really sit here and say that in 14 days, as soon as this halving occurs, Bitcoin's going to pump, because that's not the case, okay? Historically, that's simply not been the case. The halving can be anything on the short-term scale. So it's merely a macro indicator. And if we're looking at 4-year cycle, right, this is very important here. This is where we get into the real nitty-gritty, right? The halving is the thing that really started the 4-year cycle. Okay, so you look at 2012, the first halving here in yellow, that's when the 4-year cycle really begun. The halving is the reason we have the 4-year cycle, because what happens every 4 years, guys? The halving happens every 4 years. There's a reason why it's called the 4-year cycle. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from the halving. The halving occurs every 4 years. Therefore, it triggers macro trends. Those macro trends play out on a 4-year basis. Therefore, we have the 4-year cycle. Very simple stuff. So, what the halving is, as we've just established, it's not a short-term data point. It's not relevant for short-term. It's a macro data point. And with macro data points, we can imply them in macro price range predictions. So, we've got various future predictions here on Bitcoin. I haven't altered them in a long period of time. A lot of them have become actually invalid as we've moved upwards quite high. Basically, I made these predictions originally about 12 months ago. I said that Bitcoin will top out in this bull market between around $103,000 and $196,000. I still stand by that. I think that's the most likely price range we'll see the top, $103,000 to $196,000. But it's very important to note that in these macro predictions, the formulas I used only used 3 data points. One of them was the bottom, one of them was the halving, one of them was the top, okay? And I've extrapolated everything based on those data points. Now, obviously, with the halving being a data point, we have to know where Bitcoin is at the halving in order to implement that number into the formulas and give us a valid prediction. We didn't know where Bitcoin would be at the halving. So I tried 12 months ago to use various mathematical formulas to speculate where Bitcoin would be. I got 2 separate strategies. One of them gave me 39k at the halving, which of course is now very invalid. And one of them gave me 63k at the halving, which of course is quite close to where we are right now. So what I'm trying to say is this. When the halving occurs in 2 weeks, I will take the price of which Bitcoin is at on the halving day, and I will plug it into these various formulas, and it will give me a relatively concise prediction about where Bitcoin will go in this bull market. I'm not going to do it right now because the halving's 14 days away. A lot can happen in 14 days. We know what Bitcoin's doing in short term. You can check out my last video if you don't know that. It's very clear that Bitcoin could move quite dramatically over the next 14 days, and so there's no point doing it right now. But it's very important to note that when the halving does occur, I will be able to use that macro data point, plug it into these formulas, and it will give me a price target. Now, that price target will be within the 103 to 196 range, but it will narrow down that range to probably 30, 40,000, maybe 50,000 price range within that larger range there. So when the halving occurs, come back to this YouTube channel, watch my video. I'll make a price prediction video based on the halving, and we'll see how we go from there. Now, obviously, it's very important to note that these formulas are kind of harvested from 4-year cycle, and as we know, the 4-year cycle right now is under threat to a certain extent. Again, like going back to what I said before, we've moved faster than expected, and so there's no reason really to believe... Look, I shouldn't say there's no reason to believe the 4-year cycle will play out this time, because it's just not the case. What I'm trying to say is there's no real reason to believe anything in particular right now, because the 4-year cycle is based on tops and bottoms, and the tops and bottoms have been perfectly valid. 2021 was perfectly valid, 2022 bottom was perfectly valid, and we can't really invalidate or say the 4-year cycle is invalidated until we see where the top actually is. By that time, it will be too late, but the point is we don't really know, right? So it's kind of hard to make any assertions about it whatsoever. And I can understand a criticism of what I'm doing right now. A criticism might be, hey, Wolf, how can you use price predictions based on the 4-year cycle to come to a conclusion about where Bitcoin will go in price this cycle? Well, the reason is, and the justification is, I'm not using these price targets to show you when Bitcoin will top. I'm using these price targets based on the 4-year cycle to show you where Bitcoin will top. I'm showing you the price, not the date. Okay, the date is up for interpretation. The date is up for debate at this point in time. Since we've moved faster than expected, there's an argument to be made that we'll be topping out earlier than expected. That's a reasonable argument. It's not provable, but it's a reasonable argument. I'm merely looking at the price, not the date, because I think the price right now, in my opinion, is actually more provable than the date. The date's up for massive speculation. Again, we've moved earlier than expected. We've done something we've never done before. There's no data surrounding what we've done. Therefore, it's very difficult to come to a conclusion about when we will top out. But as for the price, we do have historical data, cycle to cycle, giving us indicators, giving us data points that we can use to make price extrapolation predictions. Okay, so I've kind of jumbled around these words at the end of the video here. Last 2 minutes have just been me rambling about nuances and semantics mainly. But the point is this. Here's what I'm going to conclude with. The halving is coming in 14 days. The halving is a very important macro data point. It is still relevant to this cycle, even though we have seen some slight deviations from previous cycles. It is not a short-term indicator. It does not lead to any particular price action in the short term, whether it be a pump or a drop. It's a bit of a non-event on a short-term level. And when we see the halving, I will be able to plug the number, the price that Bitcoin is at the halving, into my cyclical formulas and get a vague price prediction for this bull market. That will have a degree of accuracy that we'll discuss when we do that, okay? So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Very informative one today. Check out, again, the BitGet and BingX exchanges. I've already given you the referral links down below. Then go ahead and check out the Bull Market Sale for the Become a Trader 10-unit course. If you want to learn how to trade, if you want to get educated on how to do TA, how to enter trades, how to find trades, how to do market psychology, all these kind of things, you can do it in that course. And then finally, the VIP group is available 24/7, guys. You can enter this VIP group here. It's a trading group on Telegram. We do altcoin trading signals with a 77.51% win rate. That is basically 3/4 of our trades being profitable. Very, very profitable group. We just released our quarterly trading results. We've now got 18 months of trading results on there, so check that out. Fully transparent. Thanks guys for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next video. Cheers.